Hi guys, this is Nathan from Nathan's Online Academy. Welcome to episode 2 of the Midnight Musings Podcast. Well, as 2024 is the year of the dragon, I would like to discuss a bit about the subject of dragons. Lately, well, just a few days earlier, to be more precise, I've seen certain news coverage about the topic of renaming Chinese dragons as long. And this piqued my interest as Western and Eastern depictions of dragons are indeed quite different, and this extends to their motifs, their cultural meanings, as well as their significations. So that is why I would like to discuss a bit about the differences between Western and Eastern dragons, especially in terms of cultural differences, how they are portrayed and depicted in legends and mythologies throughout different religions, cultures, and such. Now, before we begin, I deem it most proper that we provide a brief background regarding what dragons are and how they are commonly portrayed. Dragons do not really exist. Well, at least as far as we know. Dragons are mythical creatures that have captured the imaginations of people throughout decades across diverse cultures and religions. Normally, these legendary beasts, dragons, are commonly depicted as large serpentine or reptilian creatures, usually with scaly attributes, wings, as well as the ability to breathe fire, pyroclastic breath. As for the number of their appendages, these vary quite drastically across different cultures. Some dragons are depicted as only having 2, some have 3, some have 4, some have more than 4 legs. As we discussed earlier, the symbolism of dragons has evolved quite differently in Western and Eastern cultural spheres, and each of these branches of evolution have contributed to quite a rich tapestry of myths, legends, folklore, and symbolism. So let's start off with Western dragons first. The concept of dragons in Western cultures has its roots in ancient Mesopotamia, Greek, and subsequent Roman mythologies. Now, if one desires to trace back even further, the earliest texts that refer to Draconian mythology, or even relevant representations, can be found in ancient Sumerian and Babylonian texts. Now, back then, these representations were mostly closely associated with havoc, chaos, and destruction. So back then, dragons were generally viewed as chaos and evil. But of course, the depictions of dragons in Western culture does not end here. Subsequent depictions and descriptions of these dragons twist and turn on a long winding path throughout the course of Western history. But we will touch upon that subject a bit later. Now let us discuss dragons in Eastern cultures. The concept of dragons in Eastern culture, especially China, has quite a long and auspicious history. Typically in East Asian cultures, dragons symbolized prosperity, power, well, in the sense of authority, and good luck. As mentioned earlier, they are often associated with imperial authority and have been witnessed to be featured on imperial insignia or regalia, well, emblems or crests of the royal family. In this case, the imperial family. Now, we have established a very basic groundwork for what Eastern and Western dragons are depicted as, how they were originally seen, and what their symbolic meanings were back then. However, what needs to be duly noted is, with the rise of technology, media, and social media, the stereotypical Western and Eastern dragons have gradually gravitated toward a consensus. Well, back in old times, Western mythology depicted dragons as dangerous, evil, destructive, and malevolent forces, while in Eastern cultures, dragons were generally revered, venerated, and seen as bringer of prosperity, good luck, and authority. However, contemporary dragons, especially portrayed in the realms of media, such as movies, novels, comics, TV series, and such, have started to blur the demarcating lines between the East and the West. For example, movies such as Dragon Rider, How to Train Your Dragon, have begun to portray dragons in a more neutral way instead of following their Eastern and Western stereotypes. What I really want to say is that in a few more years, I believe that the Eastern and Western depictions of dragons will become a thing of history and the past. Contemporary dragons will probably be more of a generic, neutral figure in media, without any overtly stereotypical implications or hidden symbolic meanings that can be traced back to ancient roots. That is my take on it. Now, as we promised in the very beginning, we will be talking a bit about the different depictions of dragons in Eastern and Western mythologies, especially throughout different cultures and religions, as there are quite a few myths, legends, and folklore that are about dragons. I have chosen a few that I am more familiar with, as I am a foreign literature major, and in the end I opted to discuss 8 of some of the most famous dragons that you might have heard of in myths, legends, and folklore. In order to prevent myself from straying too far away from the main topic, we will not be going over the entire myth, legend, or tale that the dragon pertains to. What I will be doing is introducing the dragon, what tale it comes from, a bit about its backstory, its origins, and then expand upon its cultural signification as well as its implications, well, long-term implications for the contemporary world. Let's start off with a Norse dragon, one that is so famous that I believe a lot of you have already heard of him. We will be talking about Fafnir. Fafnir's story is quite intricately woven into the Volsunga saga, which is a very famous and renowned Norse epic. What is interesting about the dragon Fafnir is that he was not a dragon in the beginning. Originally, he was a dwarf. When he was still a dwarf, Fafnir's father, Hreidmar, came into possession of a hoard of cursed gold. And hidden in that cursed hoard was also a very infamous ring, the cursed ring of Nibelung. Now, the Nibelungen saga is another very important and famous Norse saga, which we will not discuss today. But just to provide a little bit of background on the ring of Nibelung. The ring of Nibelungen was created by a dwarf that goes by the name of Alberich. Alberich forged the ring so that it could make the ring bearer all-powerful throughout all 3 realms. However, after the ring was stolen by a chief god, Alberich put a curse on the ring, bestowing upon the ring the power to bring death to whoever comes into possession of it. All that is the backstory of the Nibelungen, the ring of Nibelung. Well, anyways, we know that the ring is cursed and it brings death to whoever comes into possession of it. And thus, the curse spurred Fafnir's greed and avarice, which caused him to ultimately slay his own father to gain ultimate control over the cursed hoard of gold and treasure. Because of his greed and the heinous deed that came from it, Fafnir was thus transformed into a dragon. In order to protect his newfound ill-begotten wealth, Fafnir turned into a formidable and greedy dragon that laid waste to the land and caused irreparable damage and harm to its people. And then the heroic protagonist of the saga, Sigurd, embarked on a journey to slay Fafnir and claim the treasure. Consequently, with the guidance of the All-Father, the god Odin, Sigurd successfully slew Fafnir, and in doing so, gained knowledge of the language of the birds, which is quite irrelevant to our story right now. From Fafnir's tale, we can see the embodiment of greed and the hero's journey, which in this case is Sigurd slaying the dragon. The dragon-guarded treasure is actually quite a common motif in European folklore, and Fafnir's story has later influenced quite a few works. One of the most renowned ones is J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit. So it is quite possible that the dragon Smaug was created based on Fafnir himself. What about the contemporary implications of the story of Fafnir? The narrative of Fafnir continues to resonate in modern fantasy literature, influencing the portrayal of dragons as guardians of immense wealth or symbols of the dangers of unchecked greed, unlimited desire for wealth and power. The second famous dragon mythology that we will be discussing strays a bit far away from the Norse branch of dragon folklore. The next dragon that we will be discussing is the Quetzalcoatl, a very famous deity in Aztec mythology. Quetzalcoatl, which translates to feathered serpent in Nahuatl, is a very major deity in Aztec mythology. Now, just a quick side note, Nahuatl is a kind of language that is spoken by the Nahua people. Nahua people still exist to this very day, with an estimated population of 1.5 million. So Nahuatl is still a language or a set of languages that is spoken even to this day. Let's go back to the story of the Quetzalcoatl. According to Aztec mythology, Quetzalcoatl and his brother, Tezcatlipoca, created the world by sacrificing the cosmic serpent, Cipactli. Now, there are quite a few dragons or winged feathered serpents in this story so far. Quetzalcoatl also played quite a significant role in the creation of humanity. However, afterwards, a subsequent conflict with his brother, Tezcatlipoca, led to Quetzalcoatl's exile. So in this case, he was excommunicado, just like John Wick. The feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl was closely associated with agriculture, fertility, wind, and educational learning. His benevolence towards humanity was demonstrated and showcased through various attributes, positive attributes, making him quite the revered and multifaceted deity. The cultural significance of the Quetzalcoatl lies in its symbolization of the balance of opposing forces and the dualistic nature of Quetzalcoatl, well, him being a feathered serpent and also a major influential deity associated with wisdom and learning, made him a very revered figure in Aztec religion. The Quetzalcoatl is not forgotten. Its significance and symbolism continues to this day. A fire that has not yet been extinguished and is still blazing bright and fierce throughout the dark plains of Mesoamerican culture in the course of history. Quetzalcoatl appears in various forms of art and is still being celebrated in festivals such as the Aztec New Year. The feathered serpent motif continues to be a powerful symbol of wisdom and balance. The next dragon that we will discuss comes from Japanese mythology. And just a hunch, but I think that some of you already know who that I'm going to talk about. Yes, Yamata no Orochi, Bachi Dashu. Yamata no Orochi, we'll just call it Orochi from now on. Well, the Orochi is a 8-headed and 8-tailed dragon or serpent, as is depicted in Japanese mythology. Well, Orochi terrorized the land of Izumo, demanding the price of a hefty sacrifice of one maiden each year. Afterwards, the storm god, Susanoo, having been banished from the heavens, encountered an elderly couple who had just lost 7 of their 8 daughters to Orochi. Now, Susanoo decided to help the couple and devised a plan to slay Orochi. He instructed the couple to prepare 8 vats of strong, potent sake strategically around Orochi's lair. When the dragon drank the sake and fell into blissful state of drunken sleep, Susanoo attacked Orochi, well, more like assassinated Orochi, slew him, and subsequently found in Orochi's tail the famous sword Kusanagi no Tsurugi. The famous tale of Susanoo and Yamata no Orochi remains a very popular theme in Japanese culture, permeating various forms of media, including movies, video games, literature, manga, anime, and so on. The imagery of the multi-headed serpent, well, the 8-headed and 8-tailed serpent Orochi, is iconic in Japanese art. The fourth dragon is another well-known and popular dragon that many of you have already heard of. Jormungandr. Jormungandr of Norse mythology. Jormungandr, also known as the Midgard serpent, is a colossal, huge, immense sea serpent in Norse mythology. The entire length of Jormungandr can encircle Midgard and ends with Jormungandr biting its own tail. According to the Prose Edda, which is an old Norse textbook about Norse mythology, Jormungandr is one of the 3 children of the trickster god Loki, as popularized by the Marvel series, or the three children of Loki and the giantess Angerboda are Jormungandr, Fenrir, and Hel. The All-Father, Odin, he foresaw Jormungandr's potential threat, and he threw the huge serpent into Midgard, into the ocean of Midgard. By the way, for those who are not familiar with what Midgard is the human world, where humans dwell. As Jormungandr grew in the oceans of Midgard, it began to grow in such a speed and size that it encircled the world of humans, grasping or biting its own tail to form a circle around Midgard. During Ragnarok, the world-ending event, Apocalypse, also title of a famous Marvel movie, Jormungandr is prophesied to battle Thor, the god of thunder. Now, Thor and Jormungandr are arch-foes or arch-enemies in Norse mythology. They are bound to fight each other until their very deaths. Jormungandr symbolizes the chaotic forces of nature and the inevitability of cosmic events in Norse mythology. Jormungandr grasping its own tail, forming a circle, and Ouroboros also symbolizes the importance of predestination. The serpent's presence adds a sense of impending doom to the mythology, emphasizing the cyclical nature of creation and destruction, a never-ending loop. Image of Jormungandr in the form of a colossal sea serpent in its exotic and slightly macabre appeal has been adapted into various forms of media, serving as inspiration for the portrayal of world-ending threats in modern fantasy and literature. Jormungandr in this sense is actually a little bit close to what Apophis symbolizes. Apophis is also the god of destruction in Egyptian mythology, and sometimes Apophis is also described in the form of a great serpent that Ra rides out in his chariot to slay every day. The fifth dragon is a dragon that we've mentioned very briefly earlier in our conversation. Tiamat, dragon of chaos and destruction. Tiamat comes from Babylonian mythology. Tiamat is a primordial goddess and sea monster in the form of a serpent or dragon, prominently featured in the Enuma Elish, which is the Babylonian creation epic. According to legend, Tiamat, representing the primordial sea of chaos, waged war against the younger gods. Marduk, the chief god of Babylon, emerged as a hero and the main champion of the younger gods. He faced Tiamat in battle, ultimately slaying her. Marduk then used Tiamat's body to carve out the heavens and the earth, establishing order and cosmic structure from her remains. The image of Tiamat embodies the chaotic and primordial forces that have existed way before the order of the cosmos was established. The story of the battle between Tiamat and Marduk underscores the triumph of order over chaos, as well as the significance of chaos giving rise to order. The theme of conflict between order and chaos, embodied by the struggle between Tiamat and Marduk, has influenced many a subsequent mythology, and we can still hear its echoes resonating in modern literature, particularly in the genre of cosmic and epic fantasy. An additional thing that I would like to add to this particular topic is the first time that I heard of Marduk and Tiamat was when listening to a lecture of Jordan B. Peterson, famous and influential figure in the world of psychology and, you could say, philosophy. According to Dr. Peterson, the epic of Tiamat and Marduk emphasizes the importance of chaos and order, how they are inexplicably intertwined with one another, and how from chaos order can be birthed. His particular explanation and description of the epic struggle in the Enuma Elish has given me food for quite some thought. When we live in an age and a time of chaos, it does not mean that the only path that we can take is downwards, and the spiral will never end until we reach the bottom of the pit of Tartarus. Well, according to Dr. Peterson, chaos is not bad, because it is only from chaos, it is only from the flesh and the bones and the blood of the primordial dragon Tiamat that order can be birthed, as according to the epic, Marduk used Tiamat's body and her remains to establish the earth and the heavens and subsequently order from chaos. Dragon number 6, Vritra. It's a little bit of a mouthful. This time the dragon Vritra that we will be discussing comes from Hindu mythology. Vritra is a serpent or a dragon-like demon in Hindu mythology and appears in the Rig Veda. Now, the Rig Veda is an ancient collection of Vedic Sanskrit hymns. To think of it in a more simpler way, it is a canonical sacred text of Hinduism. As what exactly the hymns are for, well, the Vedic Sanskrit hymns in the Rig Veda are for praying to the Vedic gods such as Indra, the lord of the heavens, Agni, the lord of fire, Varuna, the water god, I believe, Surya, the sun god, and so on. There are a ton of different Vedic gods, and I'm not that familiar with all of them. Well, back to the point, Vritra appears in the Rig Veda. According to the myth in the hymns, Vritra was a very powerful Ashura who had gained control over the waters, causing a devastating drought on the land. Indra, who we mentioned earlier, the god of the heavens, the god of thunder, the god of rain, the god of lightning, took it upon himself to defeat and slay Vritra and release the waters. The battle between Indra and Vritra is a very centric and focal episode in Hindu mythology. Indra eventually slays Vritra with a powerful thunderbolt, releasing the waters, ending the drought, and bringing rain and waters back to the earth. This immense victory marked the renewal of life and vitality, greatly underscoring the importance of water in Hindu cosmology and mythology. The narrative of Indra and Vritra symbolizes the triumph of divine forces and power over obstacles and the restoration of cosmic balance. The story also greatly highlights the vital role of water in agriculture and sustenance, emphasizing the deity Indra's responsibility for maintaining the harmony of the cosmos. While the story of Vritra is not a very prevalent theme in contemporary Western culture, and even the majority of Eastern culture, the myth of Indra and Vritra does have quite a profound influence on Hindu philosophy and literature. Once again, the concept of a hero overcoming a dragon-like, draconian adversary is a common motif in global storytelling, influencing many modern takes and interpretations of heroic quests and challenges. I do hope that these 6 famous dragons throughout different cultures, religions, and mythology have given you at least a baseline understanding of the differences in depictions and symbolic meanings of different draconian entities throughout different religions and cultures. This might take a bit to digest, so I would strongly advise you to go back and listen to this episode once again in your spare time. Before we end our second episode of the Midnight Musings podcast, I would like to share with you one particular quote related to dragons that I think is something that can benefit all of us in the long run. This particular quote is from Dr. Jordan Peterson. The quote goes something like this: "Slay the dragon in its lair before it comes to your village." As we already know right now that the hero embarking on a quest to slay the dragon, perhaps with the goal to save a maiden from the evil clutches of the dragon, or perhaps to procure hoarded gold that is being guarded by the dragon, the hero slaying the dragon, overcoming a challenge, is a recurring theme in Draconian mythology throughout different cultures and religions. So slay the dragon in its lair does not necessarily mean that you need to find a real dragon, as they are mythical beings and do not exist. What it is trying to convey is that you should take care of the problem when it is still in its infancy. Slay the dragon when it is still hiding and sleeping inside its lair. The second part of the phrase is before it comes to your village. If you do not go and slay the dragon, if you do not proactively face your challenges head on, if you did not pluck up the courage to embark on the hero's quest and unsheath your sword and arm yourself mentally and physically to slay the dragon, then what would happen is the dragon would grow more monstrous in size by the day. And when the lair can no longer accommodate its size, or when its thirst for blood has needs to be slaked and his hunger needs to be sated, then what it would do is to crawl out of his lair and assault your village, destroying the place that you live in. Well, this basically means that if you do not take care of the problem, then the problem will become so big that it will come and take care of you. So that's what Dr. Jordan Peterson is trying to say. Slay the dragon in its lair, take care of the problem in its early stages, before it comes to your village, before the problem grows so big that it becomes literally impossible or extremely difficult to handle. I hope that this quote can benefit you in some way, as it has benefited me in the past and is still benefiting me to this very day. Same as always, make sure to like this video, share it with your friends who you believe might benefit from this sort of information, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also, follow me on Instagram at nathansonlineacademy. Last but not least, 如果想要上1对1的专业英文家教课程，请透过 IG 私讯我的个人网站、我的 Gmail， 或者是在 YouTube 留言来与我取得联系，并且报名相关课程。I will see you guys in the next episode. Nathan out.